Josh Nelson, welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. It's an honor to have you.
Man, Rob, thanks for having me, man. A lot of respect for you and what you do, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We've kind of known each other for a little while without kind of knowing each other, so it was good to jump on a call a few weeks ago, which is great to get to know you a bit more. And thank you for coming on. So I really appreciate it. But anyone that doesn't know who you are, would you mind just giving us a brief bio of you, how you've ended up where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate it. It was kind of nice to meet you finally. We followed you for a long time. Mad respect for what you do and what you give back to the business, and definitely appreciative. So, yeah,
Thank you.
everybody calls me Nelly in the coaching business. I grew up in a coaching family. My dad was a high school ball coach, coached everything. My mom was in education, so that was pretty much what we did. Um, Went to college. I went to Emory and Henry College. It's now Emory and Henry University, a small Division III school in Virginia. Played baseball there and worked in the football office, and it was still kind of the same thing. I just wanted to be a ball coach. Just wanted to be like high school football, baseball, whatever you. I just wanted to coach. Through that time, though, I kind of got to introduce maybe for the first time into like some strength and conditioning ideas and extremely elementary types of things. Like we didn't have much, but it's kind of just like everybody's origin story in this business. You know, the first time you start to fall in love with it, and just training the systems, the things that you're just routine in nature. That's kind of what started me. Went to West Virginia University for grad school. Studied under a lady named Kristen Diefenbach. She works in coaching education there at WVU. Got introduced to some really neat things with like long-term athletic development, how we as coaches can develop throughout our careers, how national governing bodies, agnostic of sport, can strand different types of ideas across a lot of different things across the country to get people jamming to the same beat. But really, really neat. And at the same time, worked in a lot of different weight rooms in the area, like small little high schools in Morgantown, there at the university, but just continuing to fall in love with it. And then probably over the next 10 almost 15 years now was at Baylor University, Penn State University, and then now here with the Atlanta Falcons.
So tell us about your role at the Falcons.
Yeah, definitely. So I work in the player performance group, work for John Griffin. So the cool thing about our staff, we got John Griffin, we got Paul Constantine, we got Eric Jernstrom, Robert Torres. Three of us, Griff, Paul, and myself, we all started at Baylor, like 12 years ago. Really young guys in the field, just trying to learn from guys over there. But it's kind of nice to be back. But I have a hybrid role. I'm the director of performance science, so putting some organization to some of our data collection, our technology that we use in training, and bringing our guys back from being away from training for a period of time. It was a new group, so we got to start that performance science group last year when we got here. But I also work as an assistant strength coach. So I train our quarterbacks and our specialists, so all the rotational guys. That's kind of my role.
Nice. And it's the quarterbacks that or the training of the quarterbacks we're going to dive into today. But so that performance science group, that's a new position?
So everywhere in the NFL, what you'll see is there's mandates. You have to collect information. There's some wearables, and Roderick Moore, good friend of mine, was here prior to me and is leading up that group. But it wasn't a formal department, anything like that recognized by the organization. And now we're blessed to be able to create that. And jumping off what Roderick did and those guys did before us, we were able to continue to develop it and make it more organized, make it maybe long term. And the neat thing about our staff is Griff, Jern, Paul, Rob, all of us have a little background in performance science. And this is probably another conversation, but we don't think of sports science as just an individual group. It's just a foundation of something that we all do. It's decision making, it's sound data collection, it's using data to inform decisions. And the killer thing is we've all worked in this business, in this world, so we just infuse it into everything we do.
Nice. I actually met Roderick last year at the Steelers. I don't know how long he'd been there. I think he was pretty
Yeah,
new.
he's been there about a year. Roderick's the man. I've
Yeah.
known Roderick for a long time, back when he used to work at Catapult.
Yeah,
in the ball
same.
world.
Yeah.
Coach Rod's the man.
Yeah. Nice. I forgot he was there. Right. Let's dive in. So in terms of key qualities that you prioritize when developing programs for specifically quarterbacks, and I think weaved into this maybe, I mean, I'm a layman. I'm not even a layman. Like, I'm below that when it comes to American football and NFL. But just give us a bit of an idea of the demands of a quarterback, and then maybe fuse that into how you actually specifically design programs for these guys.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm probably biased. I kind of jammed to just studying these guys, but the quarterback in American football is the leader on the field. He's only on the field half the time when the offense is on the field. However, he's going to be, a lot of times, your captain of the team. In terms of physical demands, it really depends on the type of offense you're running. There's different types of quarterbacks. There's drop back, play action style quarterbacks. There's quarterbacks that sit in the pocket and drive the ball down the field that don't move a lot. Then you have contemporary quarterbacks that run all over. But basically, if you've never been around football, think about the person that starts and initiates each play. He has the ability to understand spacing, where the players are at any given point on the field based upon where the defense is giving opportunities. And he's just distributing the football. It could be with a pass, a toss, a handoff, or even himself running. So there's a lot of different types of demands, both physically and cognitively, that guy is really encountering. But basically, just boiling it down, he's got to be able to move in space. He's got to take care of himself. He's got to be able to absorb contact. But he's also got to be able to deliver the ball accurately and with some zip to key playmakers. So in terms of what we kind of appropriate our training to, it really depends on the level. So I try to think about it, we're working at the elite level, but the same things hold true with young guys. A lot of it is just following a really general hierarchy of how we develop all physical qualities, starting with general fitness, strength, power, speed, and then sports skill. Then depending on where they are on their continuum of development, you're going to spend more time in each area. For young guys, maybe it's just getting stronger. Maybe it's just being able to move in space. As they push more toward the right side of their career path, maybe we start to uncover through testing, evaluation, or even conversations with other coaches specific attributes they need to develop. Maybe hip-shoulder separation is a little bit off. Sequencing from lower half to upper half is a little bit off. Maybe they have experienced an injury that we need to work around that's preventing some of that flow upstream. But I think it gets more specific as they get older. But in general, we treat the quarterback position like an athlete. I personally believe it's just an athlete. So a lot of times, if you get so specialized, you may be under-training the guy. But long story short, getting back to your question, we just treat the quarterback as an athlete. We want to treat the foundational qualities of fitness all the way up to the sports skill.
Has there been and forgive my questioning here for like I say, below a layman, is there a modern day quarterback in terms of the attributes that they need typically because of the development of the game?
Yeah. I think there's more of a contemporary style that you may see prevalent in American football now, but there's still going to be your traditional style passer still existing in the game. So there's not one style anywhere. But I think just treating that guy as an athlete allows you to do both. I'm now teaching this guy that may move around in space, may be asked to do more within the structure of an offense, to be able to handle himself in space, to move the ball around, to protect himself. But he can also sit back in a pocket and drive the ball down the field.
How do you separate training from an in-season perspective versus an off-season perspective? Again, I'm guessing this kind of theme of we treat this guy like an athlete versus just a quarterback will probably come through as we go, but I'm keen to see how that differs off-season, in-season.
Yeah, definitely. So I think just like any athlete, any sport, when you compare off-season to in-season, you're going to have a little bit more volume, a little bit more frequency in off-season, maybe even a little bit more intensity in targeted directions, maybe in block style. So like if you're in a strength block, we're going to really have higher intensities, lower volume. We're trying to elicit a specific adaptation around that in the off season. Whereas the end season, intensity is still high, volume very, very kind of dialed back a little bit. So that exists. Specific to the quarterback position, we're probably going to take a little bit more risks in the off season. Meaning, a lot of the stuff that I originally did was in the physical education space. So, Bobby Stroop is a great resource with this, where he's got guys moving around in space, crawling, tumbling. We do a lot of that in the off season, where we're teaching our bodies how to move in space, how to absorb contact, how to interact with the ground, how to get up from the ground. I like to use crawling, rolling, tumbling also to just kind of talk about how we engage and control our hips. So can I move my hips anterior to posteriorly? Can I move them in the transverse plane? A lot of that can be taught really, really simply on the floor. In season, we don't really have the chance to do that as much, nor would I maybe take as much risk with some of the tumbling. In season too, especially at the elite level, it's all about getting them to practice. So in the off season, where I may be really a little bit more rigid with, hey, we want to do this, this, and this. In season, it's all about getting them to practice. If they don't go to practice, they're not getting better. We need to practice the sport, even at this level, to be in a good position come Sunday, come game day. And especially for the quarterback position, if that quarterback is not on the field, everybody in the offense suffers because of the timing that's associated with moving the ball around the field. But once we get to the season, gone is me saying, I really need to get these big rocks accomplished. I need to get something done in these buckets. So if a guy's banged up coming off of a game, maybe game day +1, I know I want to do something for the lower half, but I may open it up to his choice a little bit more. It just opens it up so that it allows him to still get a stimulus, but it's not as rigid from what I really want to do. Just to kind of maybe answer your question, we allow them to have a little bit more autonomy in season, because the main thing is going to be getting them to the practice field and ultimately on Sunday to the game day.
I understand this is like obviously a physical position just like any others, but there's a highly skilled element to this as well, clearly. When dealing with or strength training upper body with these guys, obviously this is where they earn their money. Like, how much play is there with, and this is from their perspective, how much play is there with actually developing the upper body, like looking after shoulders and things like that, and how, I suppose, tuned in with the body they need to be? So are they conscious of doing upper body stuff? Do they like thrive on it because that's where they make the money? Like, how do you deal with that balance?
Yeah, I think they're definitely in tune to it, and depending on who you talk to, where maybe they've come from, there's varying philosophies on how much involvement in terms of like pressing, pulling that we're doing. We train regardless of the time of year. We're going to train everything, upper and lower. But I think what we try to do is be a little bit more specific to the type or mode of exercise that we're using. If I'm just purely talking about strength here, if I'm in season, I may be a little bit more conservative with some of my pressing movements, meaning I may not have them on a bench where my scap is tacked down, and I'm not having them go through an area where the acromion and the humeral head is interacting with one another with the scap locked down. But we're still pressing. We may do pushes. We may do, things with chains. We're still doing a lot of things like that, but it's just changing the variety of exercises in season. Off season, there's much more time for risk. We introduce some things that maybe we wouldn't want to do in season when throwing volume is high, when we have more opportunity to cause some soreness that you may not want to have during the season. But we'll definitely do that. As far as like transfer, I think that's a really neat term and just an idea in terms of like training these guys, because what we're trying to do is transfer what they're doing in the weight room to delivering the ball, to moving on the field effectively. So we're going to do a lot of things like medicine ball throws, where we directly feel as though that's targeting lower half, it's transferring upstream to the upper body, and it's allowing us to put force into the ball. Very specific almost very similar to the throwing motion.
Do you have any guardrails when it comes to pushing versus pulling?
Common sense, I think, is one. But if you're going to do that, we do a lot with volume calculations. So across a week, across a month, we're going to have specific percentages allocated to each week. So we're going to have like a low week. We'll have a low to medium week, a medium, and then a high week. And then depending upon where we are there, a lot of our volume is going to be associated with that. Also, the different types of exercises. So in a high week, I may be taking a little bit more risk with certain things, whereas a low week, it may be more of a back down. But I think as far as just general percentages and ratios, I'm trying to do more pulls than I am presses, especially with these guys.
I know you said in season that there's a lot more athlete input based on how they feel, based on how the game went, etc. Is there any non-negotiables that you have for these guys with the aim of keeping them out on the field as much as possible?
I'll kind of start with what we have for everybody, and it's not going to be revolutionary. We sprint weekly. Just like all the other field guys, we want them to hit above 90% at minimum once every 7 days. Accumulation of high-speed yards. So accumulation of yards over 85% each week is going to be really important for us. Even though this position is not running around like a wide receiver or a defensive back, on the off chance he boots up, turns around, and runs down the sideline, he needs to be prepared for that. So we keep an eye on that. As far as other non-negotiables, we're going to make sure that the guys are moving in all three planes. So even in season, I want to make sure that I'm doing something in frontal plane, sagittal plane, and the transverse plane. We'll try to load them, but it may be as simple as just moving through those different areas. All of our athletes go through mobility, power block, strength, and then some auxiliary. We'll do the exact same thing, so it's no different than some of our other players. But that's pretty much it.
When it comes to the more rotational work, especially, I suppose we could go off season, in season, is that much the same in terms of obviously dialing into the athletes, see what they actually need, or is the stuff that you would do regardless through off season, in season?
It really carries through from off season to in season with these guys, but it's maybe a little bit more detailed with our throwers and honestly our kickers and punters. Early on, we'll start just introducing, I mentioned pelvis control, making sure that we can anteriorly and posteriorly tip our pelvis, be able to rotate it in the transverse plane. And then after we feel comfortable doing that, it's just loading that with a progression of med ball tosses. And all that, even from off season to in season, will carry over throughout the entire year.
And then specifically shoulder work. I know I feel like I'm going over all ground, but do you do anything specifically for the shoulder, again, with the aim of keep them on the field?
Yeah, definitely. So we're big proponents of isometrics, largely from things that you've shared on your platforms, some Alex Natera, guys that have become prominent in this area. Similar things that you can do with the lower body, like a hamstring bridge or an adductor bridge, we'll do with the shoulder. We've talked to Ben Ashworth. We've talked to working with ISOs in long lever positions and short lever positions, just holding positions over time. It's been a big win for us, just increasing force, increasing rate of force development with some of the catches. And then obviously with working with some of our cuff training, we're going to do what you would see any baseball pitcher or overhead athlete with just bands, little things like that. But throughout the week, we think about arm care not as just an independent thing that's existing, but it's very much holistic. If I'm not strong as a system, I'm likely, having strong rotator cuff muscles is probably not going to save me. But if I can continue to be robust over time and do it over time, it's really going to help me in the long run.
I think Alex is actually going to be in Orlando in a couple of weeks. Next week, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, we've heard that. That's exciting.
Yeah, get a beer with him. He's an absolute hero. Okay, obviously movement. Looking at these guys as athletes, how do you assess their movement quality, given how important that is, not only from a tradition, well, from a contemporary perspective, but keeping this guy's an athlete in front of mind?
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to try to watch some tape on the guys. So if we draft a guy or we sign a guy and he's going to come in here, we want to try to see how he throws. I think personally, that's a personal interest of mine. I want to see where his arm slot is. So is a guy more over top? Is he more 3/4? Does he drop a little bit? Is he right-handed? Is he left-handed? We've worked with both of those types of quarterbacks. Does he drop his shoulder heavily at different times? That just kind of gives me a feel for what his overall throwing mechanics are in general. So then during the course of a season, subjectively, if I see something that's happening, I can start to address that from a kind of functional movement type of assessment. We use some of the Gary Gray 3D maps with all of our guys, but throughout the course of the season, we'll keep some of the 3D maps movements in our quarterbacks training program, just in the mobility block at the beginning of every day, just to get them moving in all different directions. And we do recognize that that is very subjective. It's still just us looking at things from the ankle up to the knee, hip, and then the T-spine, but it just kind of gives us a gauge throughout the entire year. I guess some other assessments specific to the quarterback is just, like shoulder, abduction, adduction, just being able to, looking at the ratio between external rotation and internal rotation, keeping in check with that in terms of force production, but also the ratio from ER to IR. I think that's been important for us.
And what do you look for there for, Nelly, in terms of ratios?
Say that again.
What do you look for there in terms of ratios?
Just as simple, just a 0.85. I want external and internal to be about 15% to one another. In a perfect world, to be 100 or 1, but it's probably never going to be that way. But if we can keep the ratio at about 0.85 or above, I feel good. I think one thing that I've made a mistake with in the past is to rely too much just on the ratio and to forget to look at force. Because you could potentially have a situation if you're just looking at the ratio where you maintain the 0.85 ratio, but your both force on ER, IR are going down. So I've really kind of dialed into that as well. One thing that we introduced about halfway through this year that's been really good, especially in terms of athlete buy-in, is just a simple grip test. We use Vald. We got the Vald package, but using grip as an indicator of just systemic status, if you will, using that game day +1, if athlete's intent is down on that, maybe I need to provide some more variety, especially on maybe pulls or rows, things like that. It's just allowed me to, on the floor, make quick adjustments with the guys.
So in terms of that, what are you using for the grip test?
Just the Dynamo from Vald.
Okay, nice. And do you have any specific like red flags, like markers, like if this guy's down 10%, we're going to try to intervene? Is it a bit more fluid than that?
Yeah, in a perfect world, with any metric that I collect, we want to create positional norms over time. Especially, not to just talk about all of the different companies, but Vald's been fantastic for us because they create such neat benchmarks for different sports. Within this position, however, it's a pretty small group. Even with us, you may carry 3 to 5 quarterbacks on a roster at any given time. So the within guy analysis is quite small. So I'm just looking at individuals and comparing them to themselves at this point. But the goal over time is to create a benchmark for the position group and then be able to assess a guy when he comes in based upon his peers, but then also his status over time.
From a conditioning perspective, what kind of demands are on those systems for a quarterback?
Yeah, I'll talk about conditioning as also just things like moving at higher speeds as well within this, if it's okay. But we're going to use our general mids program, especially in the off season. We want our quarterbacks moving in space, because if we just look at game demands of that quarterback, he's probably not going to be moving a lot. He's moving in a 15 by 15 box the majority of the time. He's within the tackles. So there's probably not as much movement as compared to other guys. But if we only train to those game demands for that position, there could be a situation where we're under training him and not giving him what he needs. So we put the quarterbacks in the mids group. The mids are like your running backs, tight ends, linebackers, that type of group. And then once we get to the season and we're really trying to drive just high-speed yardage, especially like accumulation across a week, we're going to use the mids as well. Late in the season, we may throttle that back a little bit, but we want to drive adaptation. Even in season, we want to be able to dose them appropriately so that if they find themselves in a situation where they got to go, they have that capability.
How do you manage, and I think this is an interesting conversation across all sports, those that are kind of in the wings? You've got your star who's there regardless, like you're going to patch him up and get him out because he's so good. How do you deal with the guy behind him who's very rarely going to get a shot, or even the guy behind him? Just like, you can't destroy him because he may be asked, and obviously that's super, super important, but he's got to keep up to speed. How do you deal with those guys?
Yeah, I think it's such a great conversation too, because you can take it a couple different ways. If he's young, let's say I have a developmental athlete, I feel very confident in training through the competition. Especially if a guy's not going to get a lot of playing time or minutes on the field. I think training through the competition and not necessarily treating game day as his game day can be beneficial for him in the long run. Because let's say week 6, week 7, even like late in the season, week 16, he gets a shot. Now he's going to have more of an opportunity there. If I'm working with a young athlete as well, I'd probably taking more risks like that as well, because he's going to bounce back much quicker from a week of training to game day than maybe an older quarterback. I think one thing that's been really cool for us here the past year is just learning how to work with older athletes. So maybe if you have a guy that's a little bit older, that's not the feature guy in a given week, maybe just listening to him a little bit more. That's been a really neat thing here, especially for me. I spent the majority of my time in college, except for this past year, is these guys are really smart about their development and their preparation. So just listening to them and being willing to adjust, especially for a veteran that's been around for a long time.
For those second and third guys in line for the quarterback position, do they have opportunities to play? Like, they can practice, but do they have, and this is again layman question for not specifically to do with this chat, but do they have opportunities to play in like behind closed doors games, or are they just going in raw and might not play all season?
I think it depends largely on the level. At the developmental level, high school, college, there's many more opportunities for those guys that are a little bit further down in the depth chart. There's scout team or developmental squad scrimmages that occur oftentimes in like game day +1 practices, where you may practice your guys that played in the game and then have a few periods at the end of a practice just for guys that did not play in the game. And that does a lot of neat things too, almost like top-up work where they didn't play in a game per se, but now they're going to get live full-speed action against their peers. It also allows that training week to continue for them, so they're just not completely flat moving into the next week. At this level, at the elite level in the NFL, there's not as many opportunities. They do provide a look across the league. It's probably the same. They're going to provide a look for the other side of the ball, meaning your 2s and 3s on the depth chart are going to provide a look for the first team defense, or you flip the ball. Your 2s and 3s defense would provide a look for your 1 offensive team. But that's pretty much what you're going to get. At this level too, preseason is really, really big for these guys. And then OTAs and off-season program is really big for these guys for their opportunities.
Yeah. In terms of daily monitoring, I know you mentioned the group test on game day +1. Is there any other daily monitoring that you do throughout the week to get a gauge of and try to understand these guys' bodies a bit better?
Yeah, we break our testing and monitoring each week into 3 different levels. Level 1 is something that everybody's going to get. That's your simple CMJ, your ISO 30, something that we're going to do every single week, monitoring 90% effort, high-speed yardage accumulation. Everybody, regardless of position, gets that. Level 2 is more position specific. That may be like an ERIR test for the shoulder, for the quarterbacks, a grip test like I mentioned on Game Day Plus One. And then level 3 is something that's extremely custom for the situation. Let's say a guy is having some sort of performance decrement or something's happening. Maybe coaches see something. It's something that we're going to really band together with medical, performance, nutrition, and create a custom testing protocol for them. So depending on the situation, we'll deploy either level 1, 2, or 3.
Nice. And in terms of this group, so who did you work with football all the way through at Penn and at Baylor? Yeah.
So I've been really fortunate. I've worked with many sports. I've always been in football in some capacity, but I've also had the chance to work with baseball. I've worked with tennis in the past, volleyball, a lot of different sports. But for the past 10 years, I've had a heavy impact and involvement with football.
Is there anything you've changed your mind on when it comes to coaching quarterbacks over that 10 years?
Yeah, I think a lot of times I thought I was getting too specialized and too cute, if you will. That's probably a silly term, but with types of training. So like as I was learning more, I was like, we need to do this. We need to have a very specific training regimen for the quarterbacks or throwers or baseball players, whatever it is that is specific to what they're doing. But I think just kind of going back and from things I've learned over the past couple of years, I think it's just a good, solid training program. And then on top of that, you work on transferring that to the field. It's working with the position coaches. It's identifying what they're seeing. Are there areas that they're seeing that the quarterback may be lacking, or insert any position, and then adding that a little bit at a time to the training program. One thing that I've been opened up to more than ever, and attribute this to Griff here on staff, is just isometrics, especially like run-specific isometrics, long lever isometrics, both long duration and performance isos with clusters. I think that has such a great place in every avenue of performance, not just the quarterbacks. But that's been something that I'll never get away from now that I've learned that.
And anything that you've introduced, I mean, you've probably answered the question right there with the kind of run-specific isometrics, and this is a great plug for the course, by the way, so thank you. Anything you've added recently that's been a real game changer? I mean, it could be even how you think about things, how you've done something. I know you said about not being so specialized, but is there anything else that comes to mind? Maybe something more granular?
So one that's I think had a really big impact on us, and I think if you ask any of our crew, they'd say the same thing, is just the introduction of BFR across the organization, but especially with using Hydro. We started using Hydro this past year. That's allowed us to scale BFR within training. That's been huge. And then one area that we want to get into, but we're still kind of a little bit further away, is we really assess ball behavior. So I'll look at, just with some of the metrics we get back from the league, I'll look at how the ball is responding. What's the velocity? What's the RPMs of the ball? But we want to really dig into how the quarterback is moving in its response to how the ball is moving. So I think just looking at strategy as opposed to output, I think will be really important and intriguing for us moving forward. But we're just not there yet.
So there's a chip in the ball. Is a chip in the ball?
There is.
Okay.
In the NFL balls, we're lucky. So Zebra is a provider for like game day tracking, and they manage the ball, and then we get that feedback.
And this definitely wasn't on the list, but in terms of BFR, talk to us a little bit about integrating BFR into your daily and weekly schedule, and why specifically Hydro?
Yeah, definitely. So again, this is all Griff. He started organizing this conversation with Warren and those guys over there, and it's no secret. It's something that has been shared recently through Hydro. But it's allowed us to scale how many guys we can service with blood flow restriction at any given time. much like other people, we had some different units that we could use with guys in a rehab setting or a recovery setting, but we only had a certain amount of guys that we could work with in any given session. By having Hydro shorts, we also have the shirts. We can essentially do the entire roster in one session. For us, we've used it quite extensively on game day plus one, so the day after the game, we'll just use it in our mobility block where the guys are moving around with a bike flush, and then we strap up and use the Hydro during our ISOs. So a long lever hamstring bridge or an adductor hold, we'll just strap up and use the Hydro at that point. But largely, the guys have really loved it. I think we're just scratching the surface with using Hydro. I think there's great benefit in sending it home with the guys, educating it on personal use. We travel quite extensively here, longer flights across country. Teams in the league now are traveling to different places around the globe. I think just having that capability and teaching the guys how to use it, it's a really fantastic resource.
Do they take it home currently?
A couple of our guys have, yes. Like I said, honestly, too, probably like with any tool, you're going to have guys that really like it, some guys that are somewhat indifferent. We've got some guys that really like it, and they've asked to take it home, and we definitely fully support that.
In terms of the bike flush, what particular protocol, if you can say that is?
We just use a simple 20 or 30 seconds on, 40 seconds off. It could be, or we could go 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off, depending on the week, depending on the time of year. We've been just kind of rolling with that. And basically our mobility block, and this is not really there's nothing fancy with it. We just have different stations where we set up when the guys come in to lift on that game day plus one. After we warm up, they'll go through a couple little stations of a circuit, and the bike flush is one of those. And it's just moving on the bike, really, really smooth, nothing extremely rigorous, just moving some blood around.
I jumped in because we've moved ahead and I'm going to bring it back. You mentioned the transfer. Is there anything you do in terms of transferring what you guys do in the gym onto the field? You mentioned the interaction with obviously technical coaches. What, in terms of that transfer, how you view that and what that looks like, is there anything specifically you're doing maybe out on the field with the technical coaches to aid that?
Yeah, not so much out on the field as much as just conversations.
Okay.
It's really cool. Some of our coaches lift really early in the morning, and just being there, being on the floor with those guys, I honestly just ask a lot of questions. I ask what they're seeing, what they're working on with the guys, and then I will honestly every once in a while buy a piece of equipment, show it to him, and say, "What do you think? How would you incorporate this? Do you think this is valuable?" And then work to use that with the guys. An example would be just simple like aqua bags. Like Franz Bosch has a lot of information out about how aqua bags work with transfer and just creating rigidness and using it as a constraint to teach something. The aqua bags, we're not really doing anything crazy at all, but just creating the unstable type environment when we're moving in an athletic type movement. We're just trying to think about transfer. And quite honestly, I talk about it quite a bit too. We mentioned this is a cerebral position. The guys know training, they know performance, they feel things. So we openly talk about transfer. I don't want to just do this press. I want to do this press in the rotational or transverse plane because I want it to transfer. This rotational row, I'm not just doing it to be a meathead, although we are all meatheads. I'm trying to get this to transfer. I want you to rotate fully in this transverse plane. I want you to feel your scap gliding on the backside of your rib cage. These are just the little cues to try to talk about openly while we're training. To hopefully the guys will feel it and just it'll help with everything.
Nice, mate. Well, thank you very much for jumping on. I know it's not your kind of go time right now, but there's obviously always lots of things going on, so I appreciate you jumping on. Anyone that wants to get to know more about you, is there anywhere I can direct people? Social media guy? Not so much.
Yeah, I keep up with social media. I don't really post too many things anymore.
Just
But
lurking in the background.
what's that?
Just lurking in the background.
I look in the background
Yeah,
a
nice.
lot right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I got a little guy right now. He's into youth sports, so that takes up all my time.
What does he play?
Yeah. Everything, man. Swimming, football, baseball, a little basketball. He's involved in everything.
Would you encourage him to stay in football, to push the football route, given that you've been involved for so long?
Yeah, 100%. You know,
Yes.
that it's amazing how many times that question is asked. Um, I'm biased because I've always been in football. I think football provides so many opportunities, as does every single sport for us. But I think football is a beautiful game. It brings people together from every single walk of life, different origins, different beliefs, different everything, and to try to do one thing. So, 100%.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to let you get on with your afternoon. Oh, sorry, your morning. My afternoon, your morning. But thank you again, Nelly. I really appreciate it, and look forward to keeping in touch and hopefully meeting in a couple of months and come by your place on my travels.
That'd be great, man. And again, I appreciate it. We all here in Atlanta appreciate you and respect what you do for the game, man. Big time.
Oh, appreciate that. Thank you very much. Massive appreciation. Thanks, mate.